Sopa Enari, and I'm going to read you a original postcard from the future. To that young man I used to be. Well, seeing as how you are me, or I am you, I suppose it would be superfluous to introduce myself. If the year you are in is 2013 and you are me, then let it be known firstly that I feel rather awkward to be writing to myself, but more relevantly, I can barely remember who the hell you are. But that's also beside the point. I wanted to write to you of your future, so as to alleviate any of the anxieties currently plaguing you. I believe I can do that by giving you a peek into what lies ahead. So here goes. You, actually I, am the Chief Artistic Director of the Australian Multicultural House, formerly known as the Sydney Theatre Company. Global warming is absolutely true, and now irreversible. STC had to be cut from the land and floated as an island chained to the new shore because the sea level had risen and swallowed that little cove it used to be a part of. From my office, I can now see a full view of the Sydney Opera House, which I'm almost certain was not the case in 2013. What I am definitely certain was the case in 2013 is that I, or rather you in this case, could walk from where I sit at this very moment to the Opera House in 20 minutes if you were in good spirits. In your time, one could stroll through Circular Quay, buy a coffee along the way as you would pass a busker alongside the railway bridge above. As I sit upon my desk, I am looking at just the shell roofing of the Opera House, accessible now either by boat or underground walkway. Circular Quay is underwater as the shoreline has retreated 500 metres back and counting. I assisted Simon Upton in convincing the board of this irrefutable environmental reality, and they approved the launching of STC into the ocean. Strange, and yet oddly logical, this severing of the STC from the land led to the complete revolution within the organisation. This physical act of change, the transformation of this building into an island, in turn transformed the people occupying it. The thinking almost immediately transformed, like a giant becoming aware of itself, and in doing so, reinventing itself. So, STC became the AMCH. I suppose you're wanting to know the differences of how this work operates now. Yes, we are still theatre. The latest play to run at the AMCH was Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing, which was translated into Portuguese by you. Can you believe that shit? You, a Samoan, translated Shakespeare into Portuguese, and then the Australian Multicultural House put it on with a completely Australian cast. How does this happen? I can feel you wonder. Well, since the country officially sanctioned its multicultural status with the view of embracing it, much, to put it simply, has occurred. In just 20 years, Australian children have gone from barely holding interest in one language to having an average of 3 languages. Every child is now taught their first language, which is the indigenous language of whichever region they claim. Then you will have the global languages of the world, which is English and Spanish. And last yet not least, they shall carry the language of their ancestors. We are trilingual and the first country in the history of mankind to take this mantra. Incidentally, a recent study conducted by some prestigious university, the name escapes me, from some really smart country, the name escapes me too, stated that Australians are now the most linguistically adaptable people on earth. You, or rather I in this case, can now speak 5 different languages. I know. Fucking spaced out shit, right? But get this. That's average. One of the other artistic directors speaks 10 different languages. Fluently. The bitch. I must sign off now, actually, as postcards aren't that big. But I guess I must justify before I go why I wanted to write to you. To sum it up simply, I remember the unsurety of the world at the time. At your time, the fear of that unknown world which we were even ignorant was occurring. I wanted to say, well, what I wanted to say is, just keep breathing, because everything will fall into its own perfect, natural order. And you have nothing to worry about, because you eventually become the chief artistic director of the Australian Multicultural House. Amen. P.S. Go for a run more, okay? That would really help me out.